Question number 6. Does the Pope and Vatican think Sunday rest will solve the world's natural disaster? Very interesting question. Let us begin with the Vatican's dramatic light show. Very dramatic light show. By lighting up the Vatican, they're building with images of God's creation. Indeed, the Vatican is in climate change arena. You can see here butterflies lit up the Vatican. Falling stars were also displayed as a reminder of the imminent future, climate change. And there was another prominent building recently receiving the same attention, the UN building, New York. Now, can we expect something similar to occur in the future? Please, yes. The Revelation, it explains that stars and great hailstones fall to the earth. Now, there's a lot of information for this question, so please listen up. We want to find out if our Pope and the Vatican believe that Sunday rest can solve the world's natural disasters. On the white message, she says about Mr. Moore, who lived during the Crusades, what he said. He said, later the Pope gave directions that the parish priest should advise the violators Sundays and wish them to go to church and say their prayers, lest they bring some great calamity on themselves and their neighbors. An ecclesiastical council brought forward the argument, widely accepted even by Protestants, that because persons had been struck by lightning while laboring on Sunday, it must be Sabbath. It is apparent what they said. Said the council how high the displeasure of God was upon their neglect of this Sunday. So an appeal was then made that priests and ministers, kings and princes, and all faithful people use their utmost endeavors to care that the day be restored and more devoutly observed. The time, that was a great controversy. They actually thought that folks who were killed by natural disasters while laboring on Sunday, it must be an act of God. Now you know where I'm going with this. We have great calamities occurring, prophesied calamities come. Do you think you could be blamed for your disregard of the sacred Sunday? Yes, the Pope wants us to believe that Sunday rest will save everyone. Been saying it for years, thousands. Now, here's another quote we want to take a look at. 2010, Pope Benedict, he spoke to the EU labor unions in Denmark. He suggested that a weekly day of rest might be simultaneously good for the workers and the planet. Very interesting, intriguing. This continues. Now, the Pope addresses the U.S. from the White House here. And Obama introduces Pope Francis, saying, Holy Father, he actually says 6 times. He says, Your Holiness 2 times. He says, climate change 2 times. He says, come and home 4 times. And what else is said? Let's see what else they say as the Pope is here with Obama. The White House, September 23, 2015. Is President Barack Hussein Obama introducing Pope Francis, the White House. Quote, Holy Father, you remind us that we have a sacred obligation to protect our planet. We support your call, climate, to preserve our world for future generations. Pope Francis said, he says, I look forward to these days of encounter and the phrase dialogue. It is clear that climate change is a problem in our common home. We still have time to make the change, as I would like all men and women in this nation to support efforts, international community, to protect our world. That was Pope Francis speaking from the White House, President Obama. June 28, 2015, Pope Francis, while speaking to U.S. Congress, he quotes his encyclical, Laudato Si, which says, Sunday, like the Jewish Sabbath, meant to be a day which heals. Sunday also prevents that unfettered greed, which makes us seek personal gain. And so the day of rest, it's centered on the Eucharist. It sheds light on the whole week and motivates us to greater concern for nature and the poor. This Pope Francis encyclical, he really believes indeed that Sunday rest can solve it all. While speaking to Congress, he used also key terms Very interesting. September 2015, Pope Francis speaks to a joint session Congress in D.C. saying solidarity 4 times, common good 6 times, common 6 times, Laudato Si 1 time. All these keywords are in his Sunday Rest encyclical, Laudato Si, which has been promoting all across the world, the whole globe. But if that's not enough to convince you, using actually quotes his Sunday Rest encyclical, Laudato Si, 11 plus times in his message to Congress. It's all about providing Sunday rest as the solution to climate change. Now, why? Because he wants us to believe Sunday rest will solve change. Now, can we see why so many people believe the abomination has indeed sat where it ought not to sit? And speaking great words, nonetheless. June 19, 2015, Pope Francis, he calls for a new system of global government to tackle climate change. And it does. Hey, and it goes on in August 12, 2015, Pope Francis, he says something else. We must never be slaves to work. The obsession with economic profit puts the human rhythms at risk. www.Vatican. Pope Francis wants us to understand these. Also in May 24, 2017, in addition to the environmental essay, Laudato Si, on care for our common home, the Pope also gave President Trump 2 of his other writings on the family and the joy of the gospel. Very interesting. This is plain. So the Pope, he could have just said, I want to inspire you, Mr. Trump, with the gospel, to take care of the family and our common home planet. Read this Laudato Si encyclical. It's all outlined there. And the solution, it's Sunday rest. Keep it free. And by the way, Christians, we need to open our eyes. Indeed, we need to open our eyes. Also, June 7th, 2018, we see Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Vatican secretary, very high official at the Vatican. He took part in the Bilderberg Conference, first high-ranking Vatican official. There were 131 participants. Perhaps Parolin's participation shows how much the Vatican wants to influence global elites, but also how important the Vatican is becoming the world elites as they plan their strategy for global control. That was a quote. Indeed, Vatican Secretary went to Bilderberg. July 4, 2018, United Nations website writes, quote, UN's top climate change official, UN Secretary, Executive Secretary Patricia Espinosa, speaking at an international conference entitled Saving Our Common Home, the Future of Life on Earth. Where was that? In the Vatican. Organized to coincide, nonetheless, with the 3rd anniversary of Pope Francis' encyclical, of course. This task, including finalizing the implementation guidelines of Paris climate change, is what it was about. Agreement. And sticking to their promises, deliver USD 100 billion annually by 2020 to support the climate action efforts. What the UN Executive Secretary said. We need $100 billion. Climate change, according to the United Nations. You know, I bet Pope Francis could think of a much cheaper solution. Agreed? October 15, 2017, Pope Francis convened the Advisory Assembly on the Amazon, way back then, indicating that the main objective is to find new ways for evangelizing those people, especially the indigenous people. Also, for the crisis of the Amazon forest, which is of fundamental importance for our planet. And Amazon made up 9 countries. It's an important source of oxygen for the whole earth. Pope visited Peru, saying the Amazonian peoples have never been so threatened on their own land. They're at present. Now, this sounds like a fabulous idea, right? However, there's always 2 sides. 1 year later, right on schedule, the advisors write a bulletin on the subject, same subject, the Amazon. 1 year later, Pope Francis creates the idea. What do we have in August 6, 2008? Vatican Bulletin at Vatican.va says Amazonia, new paths for the Church and for an integral ecology. Preparatory document of the advisory to the Pope for the Pan-Amazon region, claiming the gospel of Jesus in Amazonia in the ecological dimension. Everything in this world is connected. This process is characterized by the sea. It points out by a relational paradigm called integral ecology, the fundamental, fully fundamental to dignity, common good of society, social progress, and care for the environment. The threats come mainly from consumerists, the word of today's globalized economy. All are called to an ecological conversion. Change requires structural, social, and laws with economic programs. One of the main points to be heard is the cry of thousands of communities deprived Sunday Eucharist for long periods of time. www.synod.com. So the Pope wants dearly for the Amazon peoples to enjoy the freedom set out in Laudato Si, safe from global consumerism, or actually destroying their life. His solution is always the same. Refer to Laudato Si, refer to Laudato Si, refer to Laudato Si, which we know his solution in there points out that Sunday rest. This whole Amazon situation has become very weaponized. Mark my words. Finally, the most recent Amazon situation occurs on October 6th through the 27th of 2019. Vatican listens closely. In the run-up to October 6th to 27th Synod of Bishops for the Amazon that opened on October 6, 2019 in the Vatican, the world watched with horror. Almost 80,000 wildcat fires consumed 3,500 square miles of a rainforest. Synodality, the Senate of Advisors, which is 184 voting members, 80 writers. Wow, 80 writers is a constitutive property of the Church, deriving from nature as a communion in that it is rooted in the Trinitarian mystery and allows for the establishment of greater effective communion through listening and dialogue. This Amazon Synod is qualified by Pope Francis as our Synod of urgency and as the child of Laudato Si, key word. In the light of the current news about dramatic record numbers of wildfires in Brazil, the care for the Church for this Pan-Amazon region seems all the more accurate and prophetic, very prophetic. During the Synod, Amazonian Diaz Rabal, he had asked the Pope and the Synod, quote, to help us talk to the new gods of developed countries, what the people in Amazon said, which are Google, IMF, and the European Economic Community, the World Bank, in particular, about preservation of the rainforest. Everyone's gathering for this. Inside the Synod Hall, participants raised concerns about the need to protect indigenous territories. Aggression against the Amazon forest has involved deforestation and flooding. Other top things discussed were ecological citizenship, economy of solidarity. As we could go on and on regarding radical Amazon meetings, but one thing is for sure: the Vatican wants to make a big deal about the destruction of the Amazon people. Thankfully, he will offer a solution: listening, dialogue, Laudato Si's Sunday rest. Here's what's happening in Amazon. October 14, 2019. Fires devastate the Amazon rainforest. Much of the world has been outraged, arguing the loss will accelerate climate change. Meanwhile, similarly, vast forest fires in Indonesia and Malaysia leave far less than WashingtonPost.com. So let's move on to a few more things which the Vatican is addressing. Indeed, some other things. In January 7, 2019, Vatican.va, Pope Francis address to diplomatic corps, rethinking our common destiny in the present context. It also involves rethinking our relationship with our planet, what Pope Francis said. This year, 2019, immense distress and suffering caused by heavy rains, flooding, fires, earthquakes, drought, struck the inhabitants of different regions, the Americas, Southeast Asia. Hence, Among the issues, urgently calling for an agreement within the international community, like our care for the environment, climate change. Yes, the Pope desires an international community agreement. Save us all, rains and floods, fires, quakes, droughts, etc. Sounds like good intentions. May 2, 2019, Pope Francis, the common good become global. That when a supranational common good is clearly identified, as in the case of climate change or human trafficking, it necessitates a special legal authority capable of facilitating solutions. Now, are you listening to this? Because nobody's listening. The Pope demands legal authority to be facilitated for the common good of the planet. We know that means something entirely different from what most people think. He wants change now. He's got the solutions, remember? Very interesting. May 27, 2019, Pope Francis speaks at the Vatican. This is entitled, Climate Change and New Evidence from Science, Engineering, Policy. I and cordial welcome to each of you here at the Vatican, the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, and ministers of finance from various nations. I am grateful that you have come to the Vatican. You are here to help stop the crisis. As stewards of the world's finances, you will agree upon a common plan. Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Agreement. And once the common plan is agreed upon by your government, I hope that we may meet again. Pope Francis said this at the Vatican. The Pope invited not only UN officials, but world financial leaders to what? Stop the climate change crisis. Then again. His intentions sound. But underlying May 29, 2019. Catholics, they lead climate strikes. Pope Francis called Catholics to go into the street, demand action on climate change, joining 1.5 million people in the global climate strike. Very interesting. Look at another quote here. June 14, 2019, Pope Francis does something else. He declares climate emergency. He urges action addressing energy leaders. Pope Francis warns of catastrophic effects of global heating. Definitely wants us to understand the significance of the climate change. October 8, 2019, UN honors Catholic activists using data to fight climate change. There she is. Very interesting. June 14, 2019, TheGuardian.com. The Pope's impassioned plea came as he met the leaders of some of the world's biggest multinational oil companies in the Vatican on Friday to impress upon them the urgency, the scale of the challenge, and their central role tackling the emissions crisis. All the financial leaders, got all the oil leaders, got the UN leaders, kings. June 14, 2019, The Guardian, quote, the chief executives and chairs of any BP, Exxon, Shell, Total, Conoco, Chevron, Equinor, Sinopec, several other major investors, including BlackRock, responded by calling on governments to put in place carbon pricing to encourage low carbon innovation. We called for greater financial transparency to aid investors. A two-day meeting in the Vatican. It was addressed by the Pope and led by senior Vatican churchmen. The leaders called for a combination of policies, carbon pricing mechanism. See, we're being set up. That's what's going on here. Set up. Save the earth is fabulous, but the little horn, little king, he means to put you in check. Policy. Again, Daniel already told us these. Daniel explains everything. It says in Daniel 2, verse 43, that the iron, mixed with miry clay, people, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, partly strong, partly broken. Now that's exactly what the little horrid king of the Vatican is doing. He's mingling, he's convincing and deceiving. But underneath the shroud of a great savior of the world, the agenda is quite different. Professor Ellen White says, while appearing to children of men as a great physician who can heal all their maladies, he will bring disease and disaster until populous cities are reduced to ruin, desolation. Even now is at work. Accidents, calamities by sea and land, in great conflagrations, and fierce tornadoes, terrific hailstorms, and tempest storms, floods, cyclones, tidal waves, on and on. Earthquakes in every place, in 1,000 forms, place. Exception, according to the great controversy. So now we've determined that the Pope and the Vatican, they believe a Sunday rest saved the planet. So let's move to another question. Question number 7.
Keep watching for the next video in this series.